Hello, true duelists. It's me, Craig Fee, in my iconic far-fetched t-shirt, and welcome to Yu-Gi-Oh! Single Card History, series where I talk about some of the cards that have impacted Yu-Gi-Oh! Throughout the years and some of the other ones that really didn't. Today's card, the best thing to keep Cyber Dragon being played throughout the years, and the reason that it was never really meta again throughout the years. It's Chimeratech Fortress Dragon. Fortress Dragon here first came to the TCG in North America only as a Shonen Jump promo from 2009, and that lovely ultra rare with that jump text, with its first widespread print coming as a super rare promo from the Wave 1 tins in 2010. It would get a gold rare print from 2016's Premium Gold Infinite Gold, the lowliest of peasant rares in the legendary Dragon decks in 2017, and most recently, as I make this video, a widely available ultra rare print from Ghost from the Past, the Second Haunting. Also, as I make this video, it's never been on the ban list. A level 8 Dark Machine type fusion monster with 0 attack and defense. The materials to summon it are Cyber Dragon and any one or more machine type monsters, and its effect reads: cannot be used as fusion material. Must first be special summoned from your extra deck by sending the above cards from either field to the graveyard. The original attack of this card becomes 1000 times the number of materials used for its special summon. Yeah, it's played for literally one reason, and that's been the case for about well over 10 years now, so I guess we'll see exactly how long this video gets stretched out to say the same thing over and over and over. Still, it's because this card functions as the easiest out to machine decks in the entire world. I'm not sure if there really is a more effective way to break a machine type monster board, because even something like, say, System Down can be negated by something else, whereas using Chimeratech requires negating the summon of a Cyber Dragon, because that's what you do. You let your opponent make a big old board of machine type monsters, then you special summon a Cyber Dragon, or a monster that becomes Cyber Dragon on the field, and if the opponent can't negate that summon or remove it or negate the effect that makes it be Cyber Dragon in some way, you simply contact fuse the entire board away, or any machine on the board with that Cyber Dragon, wiping it away and getting yourself a fat stacked attack fusion monster, which is just a little bit of icing on the cake for you for clearing out all those machines. And looking at the graph of play from Yu-Gi-Oh! Topdecks.com, that's pretty much tracks with the spikes of, playability whenever a machine deck became a little too popular. The first use of this would come in the oh-so-popular Edison format, with Machina Gadget proving itself a popular and reliable deck to apply pressure on the opponent with consistent pluses, and even some Unga Bunga type action for those who wanted to tech in something like Solitude for their all-machine strategy. So it only makes sense to drop a Cyber Dragon on them and wipe the entire board away and punish them for playing an all-machine strategy. This was obviously useful for a mirror of two machine-type players, but it was plenty common in damn near any other deck. Whether it was a deck that already played Cyber Dragon as part of its strategy, such as, say, Synchro Cat, which only used it as a level 5 as easy means for synchro plays that also doubled as easy Chimeratech access, or in the side deck of, say, Gladiator Beast, who would throw in some number of Cyber Dragons in the side deck and then keep, Chimeratech in the main fusion, the main extra deck, because if they came up against a Cyber Dragon player or a machine type player, it was just an easy fix. All made so easy because Cyber Dragon is quite literally a free summon if the opponent has monsters and you don't, which means it doesn't really impact any of your plays in any sort of detrimental way, and it really can fuck over the opponent, especially with, again, something like Machina Gadget and those solidarity to you players doing that, because it's a big ouch anytime it happens, doesn't it? Machina Gadget would stay a popular enough deck moving forward, even if only at, say, a regional levels, and in a time when extra decks were much more flexible, it stayed a common, or not uncommon, tech for people to throw in Cyber Dragon in the side deck and then keep a Fortress in the extra deck for those machine type matchups that might come up. But soon enough, we did have a deck of machines that were just begging to be fused away. That would come with the deck known as Wind Up. And while the deck in the main had an abundance of every type nearly, the extra deck was entirely machines in regards to wind up monsters. As such, the board of Party Boats and Zen Mains made Cyber Dragon a very easy way to out one of the most annoying extra deck staples of 2012, that being wind up Zen Mains. It discouraged being destroyed, which meant that it encouraged being fused. And since Windup would always laser into Zenmighty, which is legally named Party Boat if you aren't aware, it was reliable for you to clear probably 2 monsters off their board minimum with 1 Cyber Dragon, provided of course you still had a hand depending on when it is exactly you are facing Windup. But hey, Windup look cute, so it's okay that they're known for hand loops and Shockmaster. Post Windup, Sidra would stick around in a number of side decks to make Chimeratech, again because of a lingering sense of Machina gadget players, but also with the release of Gear decks, which would rise in popularity over time due to the sheer wombo combo potential. This was a deck that could either abuse the abundance of rank 4s in the game for Gear Gigant X and other such Xyz strategies, meaning there was again some amount of machines to be abused and wiped away, or if you were playing a more synchro-focused variant that would attack in Karkuri engine, they would end on Bure and Buredo, I believe are the 2 synchro, the 7 and the 8, which are machine types and again begging to be fused away. So whichever way you went about it, the Gear Gia flip-flop and the Karkuri shenanigans getting fused away. Chimeratech is still in the extra deck for literally the only fucking purpose this card has. I will take the time to note that it wasn't the world's most popular side deck of choice against the next big machine deck of the meta, which would be Cleafort. And while you might be inclined to think that it's because, well, Cleafort could simply more often win with skill drain and vanities, and having vanities up meant you couldn't summon this card out anyways, and even if you did contact them away, they could pendulum them back, and you'd technically be right if you weren't completely wrong, because Chimeratech sends to the graveyard to special summon itself out, and Cleafort monsters go to the extra deck, which means you aren't sending them to the graveyard, which means you can't summon it out, because pendulums are just so goddamned intuitive, aren't they? You can contact Fuse Away Towers though, so I'm sure that some EU players opted for that as the way to out Towers Turbo as that deck grew in popularity, seeing as how they didn't have Diamond Crab King. When's that card getting its single card history? Just now. It was good to out Towers in Towers, that's it. Diamond Crab King covered in this video as well. Fucking nailed it. So Klee gets the pass on Chimeratech Fortress for the most part, and instead the next time this would show up in an abundance of extra decks would be in the format that was not dominated, but partaken in by Kozmo. Kozmo being a deck of psychic-type pilots that tagged into big-ass ships that would float on destruction, and the level 7 and higher ships were all untargetable by the opponent to boot, making them super annoying to deal with. The simpler, more unga-bunga style of play was not only popular, but effective in late 2015 and into 2016, with Kozmo ultimately proving one of the 3 pillars of the Kozmo, PK Fire, and Monarch meta. And also notable for being an affordable meta, that one, but I only feel like mentioning that because at some point you can comment down below about how that's a crazy thing to think of in Yu-Gi-Oh! Because I guarantee you in the next 10 years we're gonna have plenty of moments where that is simply not even remotely true. Still, you can't target the ships, and if you destroy them, they float into more ships, so how do you deal with them? Chimeratech Fortress Dragon every single time. Fusing them away was incredibly popular the entire time that Kozmo was meta and throughout all its variants. Whether it was the pure beatdown style that focused on emergency teleports and reasonings, or the Fire King variant that decided to go wombo combo and make their boards really unbeatable by adding Cyber Dragon Infinity to make another machine to contact fuse away with, or maybe you played a Demise variant, in which case I don't know what's wrong with you, but you did top an event, so you're better than me. ABC was the next machine deck to rise in popularity, and again, some people tried to use Sidra in this tried and true fashion to out it, but it wasn't quite as effective against ABC, since ABC could either banish the Cyber Dragon the moment it hit the field, and if they just tagged it out immediately, sure, you'd get more pieces to fuse away to make Chimeratech Fortress, but their pieces would be back in the graveyard, which meant they could summon out another ABC the next turn and just, again, banish it and take it away. So it's really not the most effective way to go about it, especially when you're looking to just luck sack draw into Cyber Dragon anyways. At that point, it was more common to heckin' system down, which meant that no matter what happened, the machine pieces, A, B, and C, stayed banished. So, or, you know, just give them a turtle. Turtles work too. From here, we don't get machine decks for a good little while, with Orcust being the next big one, although again, it wasn't the best way to go about outing Orcust boards. Orcust was really, at the end of its lifespan at least, known for the solid grind game and the fact that it could abuse Dingirsu's effect with Rusty Bardish to pop 2 cards, and the Fog Blade served as negate, so it really wasn't, you'd be getting 1 or 2 monsters gone and technically shutting off the counter trap if they had it up, but They were using stuff from the graveyard as quick effects with the fields, but it just wasn't ideal. It wasn't the perfect way to go about it. And all to make like a 2K beater at the end of the day, it just wasn't worth it. That being said, at the same time, this era was notable because Cyber Dragon did get support and saw a minor stint in playability. All this time, I haven't even mentioned the OG deck for this OG tech. That's mainly because Cyber Dragon was really fucking bad from a competitive standpoint for the majority of the 2010s. But with its support from Cybernetic Horizon, Cyber Dragon did become a much better standalone deck and did begin to see a smattering of tops and success at this point in time. Trouble is, Chimeratech works for you and the opponent. Because you can send the materials from either side of the field, if your opponent has a Cyber Dragon and machines, you can use only the opponent's monsters to summon out your own Chimeratech Fortress Dragon, which is something that Cyber Dragon simply has to play around every single time they come into the meta. And again, if they do play well and appropriately and keep a Cyber Dragon name off of their board at the end of their turn, you can also just tech in a Cyber Dragon and wipe away any of the machines they have, like the oh-so-prominent Cyber Dragon Infinity. So it's a little bit yucky and a little bit funny. And while a competent player will make sure to not leave out a Cyber Dragon board, it's just really funny to take advantage of that fact. That isn't to say that the deck didn't see success again, but it's just a it never stops being fucking funny to me that Cyber Dragon's biggest thing keeping it from the meta is the only thing that's kept it in the fucking meta. Post Cyber Dragon's bubble of play in the 2019 and 2020 era, this card has fallen off. There have been machine decks that have come into the meta, but end boards tend to have a little more dragons, warriors, and fairies compared to older formats, if you know what I mean. And if you don't know what I mean, I've shown the cards I'm talking about on screen that dominated, 2019 to 2024, broadly speaking. So while it does show up in, say, Rika lists, because that could help out a Super Heavy Samurai matchup wherein Super Heavy Samurai would tech in Spell Canceller, and rather than rely on spells to try and get rid of it, you simply contact fuse it away using Cyber Dragon. That's a pretty neat use of the tech, but that's not nearly as common as it, ever was prior. It did see a kind of resurgence with the release of Chimeratech Mega Fleet Dragon in a small way, which is the same card, but instead of using machine-type monsters and Cyber Dragon specifically, it uses monsters in the extra monster zone and a Cyber Dragon monster, which was really, really good in Master Rule 4, but not so much under Master Rule Sorry, because, well, only Links really, really care about the extra monster zone. Cyber Dragon, of course, as a deck, can make easy use of it, but plenty of decks don't need the extra monster zone, so it's become a little bit more niche than it once was. But I have seen a handful of people playing both. Oh, and for some fun ruling facts, if it isn't obvious, you cannot summon out Chimeratech Fortress Dragon under the effect of something like Dimension Shifter, Macro Cosmos, or
Dimensional Fisher,
or something that would banish monsters being sent to the graveyard, because the summoning condition requires you to send the materials to the grave, the same way you can't use Pendulum monsters for its summon. And the funniest ruling of all is to me that it only requires you to send the materials from the fields to the graveyard, not from the monster zones, which means that technically if your Cyber Dragon is a face-up spell or trap through some means, it can still be used as fusion material. It's almost never going to come up, but it'd be really funny if it did. Overall, Chimeratech Fortress Dragon is a very good, if a very niche card. For years, it was the definitive answer to machine decks, and is above all the most hilarious answer to a Cyber Dragon player's board that helps keep the deck from being too good in the meta, certainly with its own namesake put on the field. And yes, I'm sure the Cyber Dragon enthusiast will tell me that all the ways that the deck can easily play around it and that it's not actually an issue, but it's really fucking funny is the point that I'm trying to make here. Still, the ability to wipe away any machine type from the board by summoning a single monster is something that's really, really hard to power creep. And with Cyber Dragon techs like Cyber Dragon Core, which becomes Cyber Dragon on the field, and also can banish itself to summon a Cyber Dragon from the deck, it's just gotten easier and easier to keep Chimeratech Fortress around to be able to out-machine boards again and again and again. So while it's not really all that good right now, that's also because there isn't a machine deck going around right now as I'm making this video. But I'd be willing to bet that the next time a machine deck pops up in the big way with machine type monsters as the end board, this card will show up again because it's just such a reliable, timeless bastard to try and avoid against machine decks and you can't avoid it. This shit is inevitable anytime machines get too big in the meta. And so that's our look at Yu-Gi-Oh! Single card history, Chimeratech Fortress Dragon. Stay tuned for our next video and feel free to suggest some cards to review or what type of video you'd like to see. Don't forget to like and as always subscribe to YGO Strats to impress your smoking Italian wife, to become a true duelist, and that's it. Just two things. One button, two things. Do it now. Jesus Christ.